Now come to order. All right, so today it's an exciting moment because we're out here at Arnold Elementary School, and nothing better than being able to be out here in the schools and seeing your faces. And so we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to have a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, so let's start with the moment of silence. Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
All right, we're honored to have some new school board members tonight, and we're going to spend some time allowing Kevin Brooks, the mayor, to work with us and bringing them and making them official. But before we do that, I want to read a couple things that I'm going to do at the start of every meeting. And as chairman of the Cleveland City School Boards of Education, I'm committed to running an orderly and efficient meeting and treating everyone with respect. As board members, they will be all board members that are sitting around the table. They will be provided an equal voice for all matters, and they should, as they've been told, communicate through the Director of Schools, Dr. Dyer, for addressing his staff. So here's a couple reminders for parents and community. The Board of Education policies can be found on the clevelandschools.org website. When there, you just click the menu option, select Policy Manual under the Board of Education section, and you have a list of all of our policies there. Our meetings are not public forums. However, the board has made accommodations for you, the public, to address the board via School Board Policy 1.404, which has the requirements listed. We are going to now welcome the Mayor of Cleveland, Kevin Brooks.
Mr. Chairman, how would you like me to proceed?
There is a microphone if you'd like to use that.
Hi, everybody. It's great, this auditorium. I'm so glad the school board chose this place. Favorite places in Cleveland, and I'll speak into the microphone. It's one of my favorite places in Cleveland. Sorry, Andrea. I'm honored that you all would invite me to be here with you, and I wish I could stay for the entire wonderful length of your meeting, but there's a few of us that have to be at the Rotary 83rd Dairy Show.
That's right.
And I will not look like this shortly. All right, so we have two new members, or would you like me to swear in? We have three? Three. That's right, Dr. Riggins, Dr. Lay, and Dr. Coleman. So what we can do is we can have you stand, the three of you newly elected members. First of all, congratulations.
And Peggy Pesterfield is returning member.
And Peggy's returning. So all four of you, if you'll please stand, let me congratulate you all as a parent and now grandparent of a child in the Cleveland City School System. What an amazing honor that you all have been given by our community, that the lives and the minds and the hearts of the next generation of Cleveland are in your hands, very capable hands. And so as a long before mayor, as a parent and now grandparent, I wanted to personally thank you for your service, and I know it's going to be exemplary. So this is the official oath, and I apologize, I have to put my glasses on. And if you will raise your right hand and state your name, as I say, I, and then you'll state your name, and repeat after me. I, state your name. Do solemnly swear that you will uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Tennessee, and that as a school board member
as a school board member,
that you will faithfully execute
I will faithfully execute
the office
the office
to which you have now been elected.
to which I have been elected.
So help you God. Thank you and congratulations. Thank you.
I'm not new, but thank you.
thanks, Mayor Brooks. And congratulations to all of our new board members. First item on the agenda is our consent agenda. So I wanted to see if there's anything that we want to remove from the consent agenda. No? All right, so I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So, I second.
All right, so we want to vote now for the consent agenda. All in favor of moving forward with the consent agenda? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it moves 100% vote. All right, next we have our regular agenda, and the first thing on our agenda is the director's update.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thanks to everyone for coming out tonight. It's good to see all of our staff and teachers and office personnel and community members that are here tonight. And to our new board members and our returning board member that have been just now sworn back in, congratulations to you as well. So starting with the director's update, we can go to the first slide there. First, I want to remind everyone the Cleveland High School Hall of Fame ceremony is this Friday, 9 a.m., Raider Arena. This is going to be a really fun event. We have some great candidates that are being inducted this year, including our own Dr. Jeff Elliott, who will be part of the ceremony on Friday. So we're very excited about that, and all of our candidates who will become part of the Cleveland High School Hall of Fame. So that's always a great ceremony to attend and be part of. Going on, also, now we have the employment engagement sessions and survey. All employees have received the survey, and we are receiving that feedback. We've now had the opportunity to go to several schools that are going to pop up on the screen magically right this second. There we go. Blythe Bower, Cleveland Middle, Mayfield, and Ross are where we've gone so far and had a great session learning from our professionals that are out in the field. All the schools, those employee engagement meetings will be over by the end of September. And then I'm going to be looking for trends across the district. So the idea is going out. It's optional for any employee to attend those, listen, ask good questions, get great feedback, and take that back so that we can make decisions at the district level, and I can advise the board about trends we're seeing across the district with both praises and also concerns. So it's been a lot of fun, getting a lot of good feedback. Look forward to seeing all the surveys as they come back as well and sharing those out. We're also going to be kicking off, starting tomorrow, our Community Engagement Advisory Councils. These are councils, if you can bring all those down, Dr. Raper, that will be engaging of the community in different ways. Tomorrow, we're going to have our application that will go live. We're going to do a blast out of that in various ways so that we can make sure the community is aware of this. For those who are listening now, this goes back 2 years ago. We had, well, prior to COVID, I should say, we had these community engagement groups, and it really allowed our parents, students, community members to engage with board members, with our staff, in various ways on various committees. So you have those committees in front of you: academic engagement, special populations, ESL, innovation, student life and school safety, student information and testing, as well as the CTE Advisory Council. And truly the idea is, how can we get more community people involved in what we're doing in the schools, but also work to inform people about the different processes and ways that we operate to kind of take off the veil and secrecy sometimes that surrounds, or it seems like it may surround, the operations that we perform either in schools or at the system level. So look forward to getting those applications. I think Dr. Elliott said last time we did this, we had around 90 people from the community in different ways involved in these committees. So that's great, and I look forward to kicking this off fairly soon. And of course, we have board members that will be on each of these as well. Okay, we keep going there. Yes, that will go live tomorrow. I also want to just make sure everyone's aware, one of the things that we are doing this year, starting fairly soon, is a study of our transportation department. And the idea behind this is to really bring in an outside consultant that can help us better understand if there are ways that we can bring additional efficiency, but also look at all aspects of our transportation department. Hal Taylor and his department do an outstanding job, but how can we look at things to assist them to do that job even better and provide more services for people in our community that really need our transportation services on a regular basis? So some of the things that I've charged Lean Frog to look at are our route creation and modification. So how do we go about creating routes? Look at our current routes that we have. How can those be modified perhaps? How do we do new student adds? So when a new student moves in, how are they added to the system? How do we create that route to go pick them up? Bell schedules, I think we need to look at that as well. Route efficiency, as well as our field trip and extracurricular activities. How can we better run all of those pieces and other pieces of transportation? And again, this is just looking at ways that we can operate more efficiently, operate in maybe a better way, a different way than we do now, to bring more services to the community and to those parents and to those students who need that. So Lean Frog has conducted similar studies, as you can see, in other states, including Tennessee, and the study will take around 3 to 4 months to complete. We've already been in touch with them, and they're ready to come and eager to get started here. And I look forward to seeing those results. And the idea is we'll bring those findings to the site committee at the appropriate time, because site committee, of course, is where operations usually reports to. And then from there, we bring whatever findings need to be brought to the whole board, to that board at that time. So looking forward to seeing where that goes. The last slide I have, and I know that's a little small for some maybe to see, this is a copy of the enrollment summary. Part of the annual agenda says at the September meeting that I will present an enrollment summary for the district and our schools. Now I'm going to go more into some of these details a little bit later today, but as of this morning, this is current as of this morning, this is the breakdown for all of our schools and our grand totals. So when you look at numbers of economically disadvantaged, female, male, special education, ESL, and then total students, that's what you will see here. Our total enrollment as of this morning was 5,617 students. Okay, if you go to the next screen, please, Dr. Raper. Breaking that down a little bit more, you can see our economically disadvantaged percentage is right around 34%. Now that's called direct certification, and those are students whose families may get direct services from the state in some format. There are other ways of looking at economically disadvantaged that may make that number larger than what you see here, but through direct certification, that's the number that is reported at the state level. So around 34% would be that percentage. You can see our gender breakdown. One thing I do want to bring to your attention is special education. The percentage that's listed here is actually smaller than what we will actually see probably in another week to 2 weeks. We have a number of students that have transitioned to Cleveland from other places, other states, and when you do that, that IEP process takes a while. We have around 90 or so students that are still going through that transitional IEP process. So I would expect that number, that percentage, to go up a little higher than what you see here today. But that's where we are as of, again, this morning as far as special education students. ESL is fairly accurate, about right around 14.6% of our population currently is considered ESL. And then when you look at the Tennessee race and ethnicity numbers, you can see how that breaks down as well. Around 26.7% are Hispanic students. We have around 10.3% that are black, 50.7% that are white, and you can see the other breakdowns there as well. So just good information for you to have regarding our student makeup of our school system. And as we learn more, I'll continue to update you and give you additional information that you can have as far as our demographics are concerned. But that's my director's report for tonight, unless you have any questions. Okay.
All right. I want to let you know that this is the time where we're going to give the new board members the opportunity to take 3 minutes each, no more than 3 minutes, and just introduce themselves, let you know a little bit about them. So we'll start over here with Jody Riggins.
Hi, I'm Jody Riggins. I'm a physician assistant. Recently, I retired, and I enjoy travel. I like reading a good book, and most of all, I love watching my children and grandchildren live and learn and enjoy life. And I wanted to be on the school board because I really feel like public education is very, very important to all of us, to our nation. I think it's our only chance of shaping the future of our community and our country. So I wanted to serve our community in that effort. And I thank all the people who helped me get here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. All right, so we're going to go to our next agenda item, and we're going to sprinkle you two throughout the agenda. Okay? Next agenda item is Spotlight.
Okay, I'm going to ask Dr. Elliott and Mrs. Bender to come up, and our spotlight today, they're going to introduce who that is and why we're spotlighting this individual.
All right, good evening. It's exciting to recognize this individual this evening, honored recently in our community, sponsored by the Cleveland Banner, the 20 under 40 up-and-coming individuals, and really a great spotlight and recognition goes to Mr. Adam Moss. And tonight I'm going to ask Mr. Adam Moss to come on up here as we recognize Adam. A couple of years ago, we were beginning to take a look at, as we received ESSER funds, what our needs were going to be moving forward. And as we started looking, we realized that we needed somebody who could take the charge of leading our tutoring programs, our summer programs. It was going to be so crucial as we intervened to help our students out. And as we were looking and put out the post and interviewed, Adam Moss came to the top of the list, obviously, because we know he can take charge, and we've seen evidence over the years of the efforts and the success that he's had with his own students over the years here at Arnold Memorial, where he served. And I'm going to let Ms. Bender speak just a moment of that. Ms. Bender served, as you know, here at Arnold Memorial as the principal here, and I'm going to let her say a few words about Adam.
Thank you. It's an honor to be able to talk to you a little bit about Adam Moss. I had the privilege of hiring Adam in 2008. Adam is a product of Cleveland City Schools, went to Lee University, did his student teaching, and then came back to Arnold to teach. When we hired Adam, he was in 3rd grade for just a short period of time. Then we had a 5th grade teacher that retired, and Adam decided that he wanted to move to 5th grade. And I will tell you, Adam taught like nobody's business in 5th grade math. I will tell you right now, those students loved math. They loved being in Mr. Moss's class. We saw great gains from our students. We saw great test scores. And then Adam wanted to do a little more. So Adam came to me and said, what about a math Olympiad program for Cleveland City Schools? I said, do you want to do it? He said, yes. So we got approval from the school board and from Dr. Denning at that time. And Adam single-handedly started the Math Olympiads. Krista's nodding her head because she was a coach there for us at one point in time. But it became not just a district-wide, but a community-wide. We had teams from all of the surrounding school systems in this area to compete. It was highly successful, and it taught our children to love math. After Adam decided that he wanted to do a little more, then he moved to the RTI position and became a facilitator for the RTI program. And then most recently, he's joined us in this role with the after-school tutorial in Raiders XD. So, Adam, we thank you. We applaud the banner for the recognition of 20 under 40 because of the dedication that you've given to Cleveland City Schools and to the Cleveland community to promote education and to promote our students. So, congratulations, Adam.
One other word about Adam. Hal Taylor was telling me and bragging about Adam over the last few months as we get together and as he plans for the after-school tutoring. It's so crucial to have these bus routes after school set up exactly right to make sure our students are getting home after school. And Adam's been a huge help in our transportation center to make that bridge happen for us, and that extra duty to help out and assist down at our transportation center too. So hats off to Adam Moss.
Thanks, Adam. All right, we're going to hear from one of our other new board members, and we'll go with Mr. Lay.
Okay, thank you, Nate. My name is Andy Lay. I was born and raised here in Cleveland. I'm a product of Cleveland City Schools. Went to Mayfield Elementary, and then Cleveland Junior High. I was junior high at the time, and then I graduated from Cleveland High School in 1993. After that, I went on to the University of Tennessee at Knoxville and got a degree in economics and a minor in business administration. And I am employed by Marion Environmental Incorporated in Chattanooga, where I serve as the controller. My wife, Becca, is also a graduate of Cleveland High School and is a teacher at Candies Creek Cherokee Elementary. And we have two sons, AJ and James. AJ is a student at Cleveland High School, and James is a student at Candies Creek, Cherokee. Hobbies revolve around spending time with my family. I coach my son's flag football team. I help with his baseball team. My other son, I go watch him play golf. And then we go as a family to other sporting events. I love this community. I'm honored to serve on this board. And I'm looking forward to working with the other board members and Dr. Dyer in reviewing and creating policies that I hope will help our students and our school personnel be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. All right, the next item on the agenda is state literacy training stipends.
Okay, pulling that up now. So this summer, our teachers had the opportunity to go to a state training, and the state training was on literacy, and there's a $1,000 stipend that goes with that, and I fully understand it has not been delivered from the state yet, so that we can hit the button to send to the staff. So we are currently waiting on that to happen, and hopefully sooner rather than later that will be the case. As it states in the document that attached to this, and I need to blow that up just a little bit, I'm going to read this. The state literacy training stipend grant is $1,000 per eligible teacher that completed Course 1 and Course 2 of training this past summer. The state is not funding the taxes and benefits above the $1,000 stipend. We have 180 teachers attend this training. I asked the Board of Education to approve a one-time use of the general fund budget balance to absorb the cost of taxes and benefits and not pass the cost to the employee. The additional cost will be $29,412. So that is the ask, and that does need board approval because it does go into our fund balance to pull that out so that we would be paying for the taxes and benefits and not passing that along to the teachers for their stipend.
So is this your recommendation?
That is my recommendation.
Okay, can you state that recommendation for the minutes, please?
Absolutely. So the recommendation is for the Board of Education to approve a one-time use of the general fund balance to absorb the cost of taxes and benefits and not pass that cost to the employee. The additional cost will be $29,412.
So we have
I have a question. Dr. Dyer, was this training for the regular reading curriculum, or was this over and above that?
This is over and above. This is for state training for reading and literacy.
And it was here?
It was located here. It was across the state, but we held training here in Cleveland.
Okay, so we have a recommendation from Dr. Dyer. Andrea, can you state that recommendation again?
I have one more question. I'm sorry.
The recommendation is for the board to approve the use of funds for the state literacy training stipend.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move.
Okay, do we have a second? All right, so now we'll open up for discussion.
I'm sorry. Is that out of line?
It's fine.
Have you had a lot of feedback as to how this is being used, or how well the teachers was engaged in it?
I think for that question, I'm going to actually ask Kelly Bender, since she's closest to the microphone, to come up there and talk about any feedback that she has obtained. I know what I've heard, but she's the elementary person, so I'll ask her to speak to that.
Yeah, there were 2 courses that were offered, Mrs. Ingram, and the first one was an online course that was modules. There were 6 different modules that the teachers had to complete independently. This was at the elementary level, and then the state went back and recreated or created a program for the secondary level as well, okay? So the first part of it was an online module that they did independently, about 30 hours of work, all right? The second one was an in-person training, either 4 or 5 days, depending on the holiday schedule. That Memorial Day week, it only ended up being 4 days. But it was from 8 until 3:30 every day, and it was led by a group of educators from TNTP, from across the state that came in. What they did is they taught early foundational literacy skills, and we were fortunate enough because they used mainly the CKLA material, which we currently use. So it gave our teachers an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper and look a little more closely at some of the lessons that they were doing and some of the strategies that were being used. And then to be able to get credit for the course, they had to submit a project at the end of the course that they completed. I heard a lot of positive things about it. I think where we saw a lot of growth were people that were not necessarily in the day-to-day work of CKLA, like our special ed teachers, our ESL teachers, some of those teachers. We saw a lot of growth at the secondary level. I think Dr. Lang would tell you as well. They learned a lot about just foundational literacy. You know, grades 3, 4, and 5 don't spend a whole lot of time with phonics and phonemic awareness, and there was a section about that in both of these modules. And so I think teachers learned a little bit, had a better understanding of what that program looks like K through 5.
So this was K through 5?
Well, the elementary was K through 5. The secondary was 6 through 12.
Oh, so it was for across the board.
2 different programs.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have yeses available? So let's take a vote. Yeses, all in favor? Say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, so it's unanimous.
Okay, fantastic.
You know, this mic is really hot, and I'm just not used to this. I'm used to having to project my voice, but wow, okay. All right, so Matt is our next person to talk as a new school board member.
My name's Matthew Coleman. I've been an attorney, and I grew up here in town since early 80s. I was a graduate of Cleveland High School in '95, along with my siblings, one that graduated with Andy. Is this loud enough, or am I supposed to be over here? My younger siblings all graduated from Cleveland. We've got several teachers in our family. None of them are here in the city school system. They live in Chattanooga. I've got a couple of wonderful children, and my wife that was here earlier, but the younger one is what you would expect out of a 5-year-old. So when I was asked by one of my law partners to get involved in this race, I sat down with my wife, and we really kind of put a lot of thought and prayer into it. And really what resonated for me to be on this board are my children and those children. And can we continue to build upon a public school system that's going to provide that education? I see the education system here and the public school as being the backbone of this community, and it is what our future is going to be, and I think a lot of us have talked about that. So I'm excited to be able to have an opportunity to help and maybe bring a different insight from a business perspective or from a legal perspective onto the board, and so I'm excited over the next 4 years to be involved in that. So,
Thank you, Matt. We gave the new board members opportunity to share about themselves, and so I'm going to ask the older members, or those that have been on here for more than one term, to do that in the future meetings. So 3 minutes, and we'd love to hear from you. I know most know you, but there's always new people coming into the system, and so I think it's important for them to get to know you as well. So, next item on the agenda is staffing update.
Okay, and if we can go back to my slide deck, there we go. Great. Dr. Rapers, go ahead and progress to the next slide. There we go. So I wanted to give the board an update about where we are regarding staffing in our schools, because this year we have seen really what I would call unprecedented growth in the district. We have around, if you look this morning, around 100 students over where we were last year at this time, which is great, but it does present some challenges that are unique. And as you see, when we unfold this onion as we go through this presentation today, we have several issues that I want you to think through and challenges that we're having to think through as a district. So what I'm presenting with you on the first slide here is an overview of grade band values at each of our elementary schools and at Cleveland Middle School. As you look through on the right side, you'll see BEP band averages for grades 4 through 6, 7 through 12, and 0 through 3, 0 being kindergarten. So you also will find at the bottom the grade band average and max size limits, and those are set by the state, and how that breaks down. So for example, if you looked at Arnold Elementary, you can see they have 90 students in grades 4 through 6, 4 teachers for those grades, 170 students for kindergarten through 3, 9 teachers. So the 4 through 6 average is 22.5, which is below the 1 to 25 ratio that you see down in 4 through 6. And then you have 18.9 for kindergarten through 3, which you see how that falls as well. So you can go through and look at Blythe Bower, Candies Creek, Middle School, Mayfield, Ross, Stewart, and Yates regarding those numbers. And you can also kind of see that right now, if you were looking through this, you have 2 schools, Ross and Yates, that when you look at their overall kindergarten through 3 grade band average, it's higher than we want to be. It's higher than that state allowable grades band average. Now, Ross is being addressed, and I'll talk about that here in a second. And then you have Yates, it's currently at 20.54. Okay, we go to the next slide. As I mentioned, right now, we're currently roughly, I say roughly because every day that number changes somewhat. It may go down some, it may go up some, depending on students coming or going that particular day. But as I looked this morning, that number was right at 100, which is around a 1.7% overall growth of students over last year. The next little bullet point there does show that this past year, when the board approved the budget, there were 3 growth positions added to the overall budget. So 3 new teaching positions were added to the overall budget in 22-23 because we did project that growth would occur. We knew that more students would be coming, or at least we had a good inkling that more students would come this year than were at school last year. So those 3 positions were added and then used quickly, as you will see. We go to the next bullet point. ESL, English as a Second Language, has grown significantly over last year. In fact, we've added around 95 additional ESL students since this time last year, which is a roughly 13% increase over that time period. Okay, so due to that growth, we used one of our, next bullet point please, an ESL teacher was utilized back in June because we saw the growth happening. And a position was added in ESL, and that was hired over the summer. And the next bullet point, we then, as the fall came in, and we saw that number had grown more because we were able to get that count fairly early in the fall. A 6th grade teacher at CMS was transitioned into ESL, which is budget neutral. The 6th grade numbers were allowable for us to go in, and there was a teacher that was certified in ESL and bring her out to teach ESL at the middle school. We also have seen a population growth with our ERC classes, specifically at Candies Creek, Cherokee, and at Ross Elementary School. So due to that, next bullet point please, a position is now posted for ERC at Candies Creek, and that utilizes the second of those 3 growth positions that was out there. I think right now we're at number 13 for students in the ERC classroom. That is a higher need special education classroom, so that does require lower class numbers, and that is also a K through 5 ERC program. So, when you're talking about the younger students and the older students combined, that can be a handful at 13 students. At Ross, if you go down to the next bullet point, we are recommending adding an ERC, special education teacher assistant, and that position would actually be funded through federal funds. We have some available federal funds that would help and assist with that role at Ross, and that would be something that would be very helpful as far as that goes. Speaking of Ross, I mentioned earlier, Ross is above that threshold for grade span average. We have to remember Ross is a 3 through 5 standalone school. With that, 3rd grade has to stand alone for meeting that grade span average. We do not average them in with Yates because they have 2 different school numbers. They're 2 completely separate schools as far as how they operate. So to fix that, we have added our last growth position, our 3rd position that was allowable by the budget, at Ross to alleviate that higher 3rd grade issue. So the 3 positions that have been allocated from the board by the budget are now in use at both for ESL for 1, ERC, Candies Creek for 2, and then Ross for 3rd grade is the 3rd part. Okay, we'll go to the next screen. So that brings us to where we are in elementary. When you look at elementary, we have some classes and areas that we are definitely watching and trying to comprehend the best plan of action moving forward. And that's where we come to some thoughts that I have that I want to share with the board, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But as we look at these particular schools, Arnold, Candies Creek, Cherokee, Mayfield, Stewart, and Yates, you can see that we've listed some grades to watch. For example, you're looking at Arnold, 1st grade, you have 2 classes in 1st grade, you have 24 apiece in those classes. When you average all of that out, though, the K through 3 grade span average is 19.0. So while 1st grade is high as far as that classroom, the 2 classrooms in 1st grade, that grade span average is still at 19.0. And you can see the same thing at Candies Creek. 3rd grade, 25, 23, 25 in those 3 classrooms. But when you do the K through 3 grade span average, you come up to 19.3, which is below the 20.4. Mayfield, you can see the same kind of thing there, 20.31. It is just barely below, but it is below that grade span average. The only one right now that is currently above the grade span average is Yates. And you can see the numbers there, kindergarten 24 and then 3 25s, which brings our grade span average to 20.54. And that's why that's in red, because it is slightly above that 20.4 that the state will allow without any sort of waiver or process. Some other areas to watch, Dr. Raper, you can go to the next slide. Some other areas to watch include ESL. The ratio from the state is 1 to 35 for ESL. If we wanted to truly meet that 1 to 35 ratio, another 1.4 teachers would be needed for ESL. Now, we always show good faith. We've added 2 new teachers to ESL this year alone. And each year, the state has allowed us to apply for a waiver and granted a waiver because we do show good faith in trying our best to meet that ratio. ESL teachers are hard to find, and anytime you can make an attempt at that, the state tries to work with you in certain areas. So that's one area they've been good to work with us. CTE is another area that they work with us on that 1 to 25 ratio. And I say us, I would say most school systems across the state probably in CTE, because you do. Those are very popular classrooms, especially when you look at mechatronics, you look at the health sciences and those kind of courses. we try to make those classes smaller, and I would say we don't go very much over that 25 ratio, but it is allowable with the state waiver. In high school, we are continuing to watch our chemistry and English classes as well. And I would say we probably have some other spots in the high school as well that we'll have to continue to watch. The high school ratios are harder to determine just because you have a wide variety of classes. You have your AP courses, which could be 1 to 15, 1 to 20, but then you may have an English 3 or English 4 that could be 34, 35 kids in that classroom. So it balances in weird ways when you get to the high school setting because of those different courses and different numbers and different ratios. For example, Tennessee Valley Early College may have a 1 to 13 ratio just because of the way those courses are set up and those classes run. But then you have to think through how does that interact with your other regular general course classes, such as your English 3s, English 4s, which may be larger in some ways due to those smaller courses that you have in specialty areas. So it's a lot of staffing, a lot of pieces to that puzzle that you really have to get into. Any questions so far? All right, let's go to the next slide. What I've listed here are just some options that I am bringing to the table. Now, as board members, you can choose to go any direction you choose to go, but these are some options that I'm bringing to you to consider from my perspective anyway. Option 1 is you can choose to not make any changes whatsoever this year, and we can apply for waivers as needed based on class sizes or grade span averages that might be out of what's the listed compliance in the rules and regs of the state. So that's one thing, that's one option that's out there. Option 2, you could allow me to administratively transfer a teacher assistant at Yates who has an endorsement for kindergarten into the kindergarten teacher role at Yates to alleviate that grade span average. For example, well, it's not an example, it's real life. There is a teacher assistant at Yates that has the credential to teach kindergarten. We could administratively transfer from teacher assistant to teacher in kindergarten, and that 20.54 average that you saw earlier, that would fix that issue. Okay, so that's one thing you could consider as far as that goes. That would be roughly a $30,000 budget adjustment, and that is something that we do see as a feasible option at this point. Another option going along top of that would be, as I mentioned earlier, adding an ERC teacher assistant at Ross, and that would be paid actually through federal funds. And David Stone and Special Education, they have those federal funds available to use for this particular purpose. A third option is allocate additional teaching positions to the schools mentioned previously to address larger class sizes this year. The grade span averages are in compliance at this time except at Yates, and that's the point I want to bring back. Those other schools that I did mention that have those large individual grades, the grade span average does fall under that state average at this point, even though some of those classes are larger. What we're looking at as far as the budget part of this really depends on if you find those teachers, when you find those teachers, what is their licensure, how many years of service do they have, what degree do they have. So that's why you see the wide amount of change there, anywhere from $475,000 to, we're going to say roughly $808,000 would be the cost if you wanted to try to go back to that slide I showed earlier and bring some of those class sizes down that are larger at this time. Now, something to think through, if you were to do that at this time, it would mean a large scale across the board change to student and staff assignments. For example, if you added a teacher, I'm going to say at Mayfield first grade, then you would have to go through at Mayfield and make wholesale changes. Candies Creek, if you added a teacher in third grade, at this point you'd have to go back through and the principal would have to rearrange all of that. So that's something that you would need to do in order to make this happen. The other part of that is, and just being honest with you, it's going to be very difficult to find teachers or staff at this point in time. It's hard to find them. I could tell you the two principals that have openings right now, Ross and over at Candies Creek, the applicant pool is just not as strong as it would be in spring. Okay, so that's just kind of where that falls. Now, those are options that I've got for you. Of course, you as a board can develop other options. I would like to give you my recommendation, and then we can go whatever direction we want to go as far as that goes tonight. Dr. Raper, if you go to the next screen. My recommendation is option 2. Option 2 would alleviate the issue with being over the grade band average at Yates. We do have that teacher assistant who has the credential, has the licensure, that would allow that person to roll into that position and to fix the problem, the issue that we're facing at Yates. And also, I would recommend the teacher assistant be approved, even though that's not coming from the general budget. The board is the only organization that can approve a new position for the school system. So I would ask that if we do option 2, we also include the ERC teacher that's paid through federal funds over at Ross. So that's what I'm recommending, and that's something we can discuss as a board in just a few minutes. I would also, and I've gone on to say this here, I would recommend that in our future budget cycle, we need to really take a step back, I think, and think about our overall staffing model that we use. Coming out of COVID, we're seeing a lot of movement. We're seeing a lot of people move to Cleveland. We're seeing more businesses coming this way. I think that's going to continue. If we look at our own master facility plan that was just approved by the board back in August, that plan calls for at least a 1.3% growth in student population per year over the foreseeable future. And that's something that I think we have to take into account and plan on that growth coming our direction. So one thing that I would like to do is something that used to do in the former districts where I've worked, and is really start to look at staffing from a different angle, which is more of a growth model. In Shelby County Schools, there for a long time, we were opening 1 to 2 schools per year. And because of that, of course, you had to rezone, you had to staff, and you had to do a lot of different things in different ways. We're not quite at that point yet, but I think it is time for us to step back and look at different ways that we can look at budgeting staffing needs that we're going to have in the future, because it is a lot harder to find a teacher now than it is in March and April. So we can better plan to hire in March and April. That means less transitions this time of the year with plucking a teacher, moving a teacher to a different grade span, and so forth. And that's something that I really want us to take time to look at. And I would love to spend time doing that, talking to superintendents that I know in the Nashville suburbs and the Memphis suburbs, other areas that are growing, and then come back with a recommendation on things we can look at in the future. I included some of that here, how our new master capital plan and staffing work together, student population growth and its effect on ESL, special populations, general ed, and specialty areas. You know, we need to think about that. When you think about ERC student or even ESL student, you may have an ESL student that is also in special education, is also in general education courses, and they take music, art, and PE. So one student could literally affect 5 or 6 other classrooms, as well as far as needing staffing. So it gets very complicated, it gets very, there's a formula for all of this, I'm sure, somewhere. But that's something that I think we need to be looking at. Other ways that we can do staffing, other ways that we can operate from that point of view to make, hopefully, what we're seeing today less of an issue in future years. So my recommendation is option 2, and I'd be glad to take any questions you have and any discussion on any of this.
I just want to say that I support option number 2, too, because I think the kindergarten problem is particularly important because of COVID, so many of those kids had never been in school. This is their first time, and for a teacher to deal with a large class of children that have never been in a disciplined situation before is extremely difficult. So I think that would help a lot.
Couple of questions. As I understood in option 2, you're suggesting not just making the transition for the teacher, but also handling somebody for the special education department. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's a combo deal.
Yes, sir. Option 2 would alleviate the issue that we have with the staffing or the grade span average at Yates, because we would move that teacher assistant to that teacher role. And then we would also, at the same with that, you would be approving the ERC teacher assistant at Ross.
And I think that as I've just started into this process, the calls that I've gotten have been that young age, especially at the Ross
Right.
and at the Candies Creek departments and the younger
Right.
group, and also the special education.
Right.
And then the third area in that, I think that's been a concern, or at least let's call it a concern, has been the ESL department, as
Right.
far as being a body of people that need that extra resource
Right.
in order to be able to achieve the academics that we want them to do.
Right.
And so is there a way to kind of sparse out 3 and add some relief to that ESL group, or do we think that that's something that is going to be manageable?
Yeah, ESL, we currently have, I believe it's 22 teachers in ESL in our district, which is pretty phenomenal for a community our size and a school system our size to have 22. And does that 22 include the 2 that we've added here? Okay, yes, I'm looking at HR. I was trying to find Kelly Kaiser. So that includes the 2 that we've put in my recommendation, or the information I shared today. That includes them as well. To get us to that true 1:35 ratio, and again, I don't know what our ESL number is as of this afternoon, but I guarantee you it's not less than what I shared with you earlier. We would need 1.4 additional teachers. So, if the board chose to add another teacher role for ESL, we can post that. I'm looking for Cindy, would this be something that would have to come from our rainy day funds, for lack of a better term, I would think. If the board chose to add another general teacher for ESL, where would those funds come from for that? I'm just going to ask you while you're on the spot.
We would need to go back through and use some other line items. This would not be a one-time expense.
Right.
These teachers need to be repaid, and we would be some balance for that.
Yeah. So since it's a recurring, in case for those who couldn't hear that, since it would be a recurring expense, we cannot pull that from our balance. So we would have to look at a current budget, how you can amend that current budget to make that one other teacher actually part of the general budget that we have this year. So we'd have to bring an amendment, which we normally do at the end of the school year, to the board for amending the budget to bring that role on. You're probably looking at a roughly $60,000 expense somewhere in there for bringing the teacher and benefits for one teacher. So what we're looking at, if you wanted to move down that road, is $30,000 roughly for the general budget for that teacher assistant moving into a teacher role, then roughly $60,000 or so for a teacher for ESL, if that's the direction that the board would want to go.
Dr. Dyer, would that teacher assistant be replaced?
When we looked at the ratios, Yates is actually, when you break it all down and all things considered and compare schools to schools, apples to apples, and I'm looking at Kelly Kaiser to make sure I say this the right way, Yates actually has 1 additional teacher assistant than the other schools do at this time for the number of students. So in all things considered, it actually works out well in this case, because you do have a teacher assistant that's, I'm not going to use, I'm going to say extra, but it's not really extra, but you do have another one that's assigned there over the current allotment other schools have that could move into that role. So we would not replace that role.
Well, I definitely think that we've got 25 kindergartners.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot,
So-
and I really think that we've got to help
Yeah.
those. And naturally, I would speak for Yates.
And I will say, because I visited the kindergarten teachers, y'all are doing a phenomenal job over there, so kudos to you, but I would love to see some.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt. Is the $30,000 just the difference, the discrepancy in pay between
It
the
is.
teacher's assistant and a teacher?
It is, when you count all the things considered the benefits and the pay package.
So I have a question. I'm in favor of option 2 as well, and using this teacher assistant what is the ripple effect of transitioning that person away? What is the ripple effect?
You know, I'm gonna speak from my perspective, and then I would ask maybe Kelly Bender from an elementary point of view to maybe think about that too. But one of the things you would have to think through, that the teacher assistant will know a number of those students already, if not all of them, but a lot of them already. So there would be some less transitioning as far as that goes, as far as knowing names and faces, and they know her name and face and everything that goes with that. But yes, there would be some, and Mr. Connor somewhere in the back there would have to be a rearranging of classes, which is not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but that's how you would go through that process. And Mr. O'Connor would have to think through that process and work with his current teachers and staff to do that as seamless as possible and as soon as possible to make that transition take effect.
Speaking from experience, it's certainly not ideal, and it's more difficult sometimes for the teachers than it is for the kids. So within a week or so, they'll never know the difference.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I also recognize the value of option number 2. I do want to add to your recommendation where you were talking about future budget cycles. Right. Obviously, Cleveland is a growing city, yes, and this isn't a one-time occurrence. So I think it's going to be very important to add to that communicating now with our city, with our funding body, our city council, and our city manager, to make sure they understand the impact of all of that growth and how they need to maybe consider how they're going to be funding us in the future to allow us to absorb that growth.
I agree. And I will tell you, too, just as a reminder for all of us in the room, TISA is our new funding model starting next year. And BEP, as we know it today for funding, does go away at the end of this budget cycle. None of us at this time have gone through any training with TISA. So that's something where the rules are still being promulgated and going through all those different steps. So at some point, I am sure that TSBA will provide training for school board members, and TOS and the state will provide training for all the rest of us. But that's a big part of this that we don't know what that's going to look like yet as far as funding goes. So I look forward to getting more information on that, because that will help us understand all of this better as well in future years.
Any more questions? All right, so we have a recommendation from the director, and it's a pretty loaded recommendation. So do you want to approve each or vote on each individually, or do you want to do it as a package? What's your pleasure?
Package is fine. Which would serve you better? Would you?
Well, if you're asking my opinion, I'll just give it to you. My recommendation is what's listed there for the first bullet point. If we could, a motion could be to approve option 2 I think a way you could say that is approving option 2, which would allow the school board or school system to allow that teacher assistant to become the kindergarten teacher at Yates, and then also allow for the funding from federal funds for the ERC teacher at Ross Elementary School. Unless there's any additions to that.
Did you get that, Andrea?
I'm working on it.
All right, so help her out if she needs it there. So we have Dr. Dye's recommendation. Do we have someone to accept that as a motion?
So make motion.
1 and 2?
Carolyn, Peggy and Carolyn.
Peggy and Carolyn. All right, all in favor? With yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay. So starting tomorrow, we'll get to work on this, and Mr. Kaiser, Mr. O'Connor will work to get those things in motion, and we'll work with everyone else in the department to get what we've approved tonight, what you've as board approved tonight, and we'll get that flowing. So.
All right, we just heard.
You can breathe now.
I think we have the whole.
Hey, we really appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
We think a lot of you, and we don't have an inkling those of us that haven't been in that classroom setting don't have an inkling of what you deal with. So I know there's some up here that do, and we just want you to know we appreciate you and all you do.
Yeah.
Point, they're here. Do they have anything to add? Could we hear, well, what their thoughts were on this issue? Would that be appropriate? They're here, they're outspoken.
Go to a
I'd like to hear Mrs. Morris's.
If you'll remember, when I started the meeting, I said it's not an open forum, and so
My apologies.
if we start opening for comments like that, then we'd have to do it for everybody in the future meetings. So, however, why don't we tell them that we appreciate them as board members? So. You know who we are, so feel free to reach out to us and send us notes, calls,
I would like to hear
texts,
from them.
emails, all that good stuff. All right, so the next item on the agenda is first reading of policy. We have two policies for first reading. That's 4.7, which deals with testing programs. And you have that there on the screen. All right, so the only change that we're seeing here for this policy is the weighting TCAPS scores. And that's on the second page there. It's for grades 6 through 8, changing from 10% to 15%, and for grades 9 through 12, changing from 20% to 15%.
Correct.
Then later on the section regarding interest in inventories and career assessments, we're adding major clarity. That's the option there, is an interest inventory. And that's the changes for this first reading for policy 4.7. All right. Any questions about this one?
I've got a question. How often have we not gotten the 10 ready scores or the EOC grades 5 days before?
Mr. Cars, could you come to the microphone, please? Always called the testing guru. Did you hear the question?
You were asking about how long it had been?
Yeah, how often have we not gotten the scores 5 days before?
That's a great question. So this year, with the state going to middle school online testing, allowing us to do that, that pushed forward the return date, because typically we get those scores right at the very end of school, so we're able to exempt that and not count those in. So this year, that's just not going to be an option, because their projected delivery date for those quick scores is going to be well before that. So we needed to go ahead and amend this back to include that. That's a state law that asks that be placed into a student's final grade, so we have to adhere to that. But in the past, we have had that option to waive that because it's a late delivery of those scores. So.
Any other questions? All right, next policy is policy 4.210, is the credit recovery policy. We have a change here, and it's toward the bottom of the page. It's in red under the grade section. Students passing credit recovery shall receive a grade of 60%, it used to say 70, under the state uniform grading system. So that's the change to this credit recovery policy. Any questions?
Why did they change that?
I can answer that. As a reminder, for grades 6 through 12, a 60 is now a D, where that used to be an F. So that's a new, for grades 6 through 12, 60 is now a D, 70 is a C. So
that's the highest grade you can
The
get?
highest grade for credit recovery is a 60, and that's set by State Board of Education policy.
One other question. What is the difference time-wise between this course, this credit recovery, and taking a class over again?
Ms. O'Brien, you want to come to the microphone? Thank you.
So credit recovery is used in a lot of different ways at the high school. Sometimes it's through a credit recovery lab, which is an actual block all day, every day. That's typically reserved for students who need to make up several credits, and they can finish anywhere between 2 and 3 credits within that semester time frame. And then we also use it for summer school, which is during that 4-week time frame in June. And then we have what we call walkers, which are individuals who have credit recovery, but they're not necessarily assigned to a class. And so we really recommend for 1 credit course that they put in 5 hours of work a week, and then if they do that, they can finish that over a semester. So obviously, if they're in an actual block during that time, and they do some work outside of class, which they can, because it is online, then they can finish that more rapidly. So we receive students all the time who come in behind credits, and it's an opportunity for them to be able to move through credits more quickly that they've already taken, but they did not pass the class. And so if it is credit recovery, the state does allow us to edit those that they show mastery. So at the beginning of an Edgenuity course, they take a class, or they take a test, and it tells you which skills they've mastered, and then the course is written for that student on the subject areas that they haven't mastered. So that allows them to move through the units that they did not master while they sat in the class. So in order to be in credit recovery, they have to have taken the class first at some point, and they have to have gotten a 50 or better. Does that make sense?
I don't know, it seemed to me like it encourages kids just to do just enough to get by.
Sure.
Rather than really master it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any more questions? All right, so we have these 2 policies for first reading. I'd like to entertain a motion to move forward.
Well, Dr. Dyer, what is your recommendation on that?
My recommendation would be to go with the first reading of both those policies.
I'll make the motion to pass these on first reading.
Okay, do we have a second? Second? All right. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm not very confident, so let's go do around the room. Yes or no?
Aye, yes.
Point.
Wait.
Is there a little discussion in between the motion and the voting? Here's my question. Is this a state mandated change, or is this a local school change?
So when you look at the credit recovery, the grade point average, the grade is that what you're referring to?
The amendment to our policy from 70% to 60%.
Yes, that's State Board of Education. That's
Okay.
a new.
So other than implementing the policy, we don't really have a change.
That's correct.
It's a vote on this thing, right? It's being handed
Getting
down.
lined up with the state.
Yeah.
Right. That's exactly it. This is to move into alignment with the State Board of Education.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just similarly, it seems lower in the standard for what we consider to be passing. And
Exactly.
But if we don't have a choice in the matter, then I guess we'll deal with our legislators.
Right.
Just as a reminder, too, this does line up with the policy we passed previously for the uniform grading policy. The state has implemented the new grading policy that's the 60% is a D, and so this just aligns with that other policy.
Any more questions, comments?
I do have one. It says here, not all post-secondary institutions accept credit recovery.
That's right.
I mean, is that, do we know, is there a lot, or?
I'd have to go back to the high school here, and Autumn O'Brien is Director of Academics, and we'll have you come up. Yeah, there are certain places that do not accept credit recovery courses, and NCAA as well, so you want to talk about that?
That's the biggest piece, that it doesn't list necessarily clearinghouse, but NCAA does not recognize credit recovery as a clearinghouse. So we have to be very careful about those student athletes. If we have an athlete who does not pass a class, they have to retake the class, and several do. Not all students who fail a class go into credit recovery. If they're behind in credits for their grade level, then they are put in credit recovery so that we can get them through graduation. We want them to ultimately graduate. But if they're maybe 1 credit behind, we might put them back in the class and they retake the class. Or if they failed it really badly and they have a very low score, then we may put them back in the class. But the biggest piece listed there for post-secondary institutions is about the clearinghouse and NCAA, that they won't recognize it as a credit. So we have to be real careful with those students.
Okay.
Do we know how many schools will not accept it?
Well, none do for NCAA. I don't know that we've had any that do not accept our transcript for a student who transfers, who is not an NCAA, like an athlete who's going to, and that just prevents, some messy stuff with athletes to be able to get in and be able to transfer in those classes.
But the students do have the option to retake the class and get
Absolutely.
an A or a B or...
And we have the option too, as far as, if Mr. Pritchard has a student who's transferring in that he feels would be better suited to take the class, to have the seat time, then that would happen. But if you have a student who transfers in as a junior and they're 5 credits behind, there's only 8 blocks a year for them to be able to get caught up. So in summer schools, only so much time. So we do have to have some options for those more at-risk students. So we really try to reserve credit recovery for those students who are really at risk.
How many students have we had take that credit recovery? Do you know?
Gosh, it'd be hard to say. We had 100 in summer school. So this summer we had 100, and our ESL population, we have been able to serve them in certain areas in credit recovery. But we are also trying to work through some new work on Canvas, which is a different program, but that allows some different platforms, so that learning that you're talking about being able to do. But it's not easy, so the idea that they're getting out as far as not being able to do the work, they do have to do the work, but the lowering of that grade to a 60 is a state mandated thing. So the work on the actual Edgenuity platform is quite challenging.
What would be the effect if we voted against that?
If you voted against credit recovery, then you would see a much higher or less graduation rate for students, especially when you go to at-risk populations. That would be an area that would be really affected by that. Is that a fair statement?
I'm done. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I wasted the time.
All right, so let's try voting again. All in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? All right, I'm still not clear, so let's go around the room.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you say, Kelly?
I said yes,
Yes, reluctantly.
reluctantly.
It's a reluctant yes, but if it's state mandated.
If it's state mandated.
Thank you. All right, so we have another policy, and this particular policy is for removal. This is one that involves COVID-19 leave, and there's a recommendation to remove it from our list of policies.
That's correct. Yeah, this board policy actually expired June 30th, 2022, so we're asking for it to be removed from the policy manual at this time.
I'll make a motion on that one and get that one done.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, so the next item on the agenda is strategic plan focus.
Okay, Mrs. Bender, come on up.
I'm back again, but this is my last time. I'm Kelly Bender, the Supervisor of Elementary Education and School Counselors, and so we wanted to share with you just a few highlights of what's going on in elementary education right now. And the first area we will look at is English and Language Arts. We are continuing our partnership with TNTP this year. It is our final year. TNTP provides us support in our implementation of CKLA and our academic ELA program. They provide us with a consultant that comes to visit our classrooms and comes to work with our instructional coaches and our instructional facilitators. And what he does is, his name is Blake Barber. He works out of Memphis right now. And he meets with us bi-weekly by Google Meet, and then he comes onto our campus 4 or 5 times during the school year. He works with our instructional coaches to improve instructional strategies that are being used as we implement CKLA. We've seen great growth in working with Blake, and we're very excited about that partnership, and we will continue that this year. Our math, the highlight of math right now is we are going to be in the process this whole school year of preparing for math textbook adoption. It happens once every 6 years. And so right now, we have a math task force, an elementary task force. We have representatives, 2 representatives from each elementary school, one from the lower grade span and one from the upper grade span. What they will be doing is they will be trained to look at high-quality instructional material, focusing on math. We will be going to some state trainings that will show us what we need to be looking for when that math textbook adoption list is released. Then from that point on, that committee will take the curriculums that we select. We'll select 3 for our district. We will look at those. We will take those back out into our buildings. We will allow the community to also review those curriculums, and then we will make a recommendation to the school board in March of the curriculum that we would like to adopt for the coming school year, 23-24. So that's our math task force, and that will work all year long. We will continue at the elementary world to do Capturing Kids' Hearts. That is a district initiative that we do, and we're very, very proud of the work that's going on in our elementary schools with Capturing Kids' Hearts. That's all about building relationships with kids and just improving their self-worth and letting them know how important they are, and really taking an interest in them way, way, way beyond just academics. So we're excited about that. We continue to work with Jason McCowan and the Capturing Kids' Hearts staff that come and work on a regular basis with our district. The Raiders XD program, you heard a little bit about it a few minutes ago from Adam. Adam Moss is working with that. That is an after-school tutorial program that we will begin working next week. We will run that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of every week, and we do that in the fall semester, and then we'll start it again in the spring semester. That is to help those students that are struggling just a little bit academically. That may be as a result of COVID. It may be as a result of being in other schools and having gaps in education when they come back into our school district. So we're excited about that. We have a lot of teachers that have committed to that program. It will be housed at every school, every elementary school that we have in the district, and it will be an hour every day, Monday through Wednesday. Okay, and the last thing is the implementation of Project TAB. And I'm really excited about this, and I'm going to bring Dr. Danielle Scarth, if she will come and share with you. This is a new program that we are implementing this year in Cleveland City Schools under the leadership of Dr. Scarth.
Thank you. Late last fall, new research started coming out that outlined what schools should expect over the next 5 to 10 years because of the pandemic. And the more and more research that came out, the more we started to realize that we really needed to be proactive and making a plan for helping our students be successful in school, especially our students who are struggling with past trauma or adverse behaviors in the classroom. The purpose of Project TAB is to provide these supports for our students, to give them the support that they need to remain in the classroom. We have a wonderful team of people that are working with our K-12 students. We do spend most of our time in elementary classrooms, but we have offered support to our middle and high school students. Sandy Akiona is our learning support interventionist, and she works with our special education students, K-12. Cassie Bailey Phillips is our behavior support interventionist. I'm sorry, I got them mixed up. Sandy works with our gen ed students. Cassie Phillips works with our special education students. And the newest addition for behavior supports in our district is Dawn Cox, who's a crisis intervention counselor. And she's going to be working with our students who are in crisis, giving them the supports that they need in the schools. To get outside services for our students, for a parent looking for a psychologist, it often takes 3 to 4 months. And for our students, we need to give them more to help them be successful in school now. So that's where Dawn will come in. The most innovative part of the Project TAB team is our TAB teacher, Bailey Burnett. And the TAB program is data-driven, it's very research-based, and it serves our K-5 students. This is a Tier 3 intervention. So what that means is Tier 1 are interventions that teachers do in the classroom. Tier 2 is where school-level staff gets involved, like the school counselor and the administrators, to make a plan for that student. But there's times when all of those tools have been exhausted and we still need to support our students, and so that's where TAB comes in. It's a Tier 3 support that comes after its school-level supports. And my big shouty caps there at the bottom, it's not a behavior class. And what I mean by that is that typical behavior classes, when a student is exhibiting behaviors in a classroom, they will be removed from that classroom and placed in a behavior class. It's a practice that is seen all over the country. But what typically happens with these students is they transfer to that class and then they stay there. They very rarely get the opportunity to move back and be part of their typical peers again. So Project TAB, the classroom, has a cap of 10 students. And the reason that we did that is because these, like I said, is a Tier 3 support, so these students need a lot of interventions and a lot of skill building before they can return to their classroom, and a larger class size would not be conducive to that. So we have 10 students, and then we also, on top of those 10 students, have 2 emergency placements spots available. And what that means is sometimes we have students move into our district who have come from situations of extreme trauma, and we do not want to have to go through the whole 3-month process of making behavior plans and offering support when we know that the reason most often for that behavior is due to their trauma. So those students can be emergency placed in the TAB program and receive services right away. This program is unique because it is for general and special education students. So Bailey is dual certified. She can teach our special ed students and she can also teach our general ed students, with the focus being on functional behavior skills and foundational skill building so that the students can be successful when they return to their school. Students are placed for either 4 or 6 weeks, depending on their needs, and all during that time there is direct contact back with their home zone school. Their home zone teacher comes to the TAB program and is trained and keeps that relationship building going with that student so that they can return and be successful in their classroom. We had our first student start actually today in the TAB program, and it's evident that it is going to be very successful, and I'm very excited about Cleveland City being proactive in finding a way to help our students be successful.
What does TAB stand for? I might have missed it, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It stands for trauma and behavior.
Oh, trauma and behavior.
How is
We
this
have some questions.
How is this funded?
That's a really good question. It's funded through a variety of different ways. My position is general funded. The other positions are ESSER.
So it's funded through our system rather than...
Right. This is funded through our system. We have general budget, and we also have our ESSER dollars from the federal government that are at work. And this is something that has been very much asked for by administrators and teachers and others that are dealing with classroom issues that, quite frankly, through COVID have become very much a real issue that hinder academic progress in a lot of ways. So glad to see this is underway. This is brand new for us, so that we're going to have to work through all these different angles and pieces of it, but glad it's underway now.
Where is Bailey housed?
She is at Stewart Elementary.
Stewart.
Yep.
And so the kids come to her for how long they need to stay?
Yes, ma'am. So it's for all of our elementary schools, and then if the parent is unable to transport, there's transportation to bring the student to Stewart.
Does she use the regular classroom curriculum, or does she have something else?
That's a really good question. So the focus of this program is more on emotional regulation skills and behavior adaptations. So our goal is not to focus on academics. But when these students are in the classroom, they are typically missing academics because of behavior. So this allows them the functional skills to then go back and jump back into district curriculum. They do still get academic work, but it is not CKLA.
Guess that's all right now.
Do we have any more questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is TCAP Family Portal.
Yes, Mr. Cars, back to the microphone.
All right, it's good to speak with you tonight about testing and families getting some results back from our testing program. I'm Michael Cars. For the new board members, I'm the Director of Student Information Systems, and so I manage Power School, Student Information.
Can you talk into the mic?
Oh, very sorry.
Thank you.
Student Information, Power School, reporting that data to the state for funding, data analysis, and then state testing is also one of my areas to oversee. So I wanted to come to you and at the request of Dr. Dyer said that there were board members that would like to know more about the state's new family portal, which will allow parents to log in and see the results of assessment. Assessment is no good without follow-up. So I wanted to share this with you. If you want to go ahead, Dr. Raper. So what is the family portal? The TCAP family portal is a new product the state has purchased. They use eMetric, a company that ACT has used for a while. It's an excellent program that allows them to funnel all the state data and all the TCAP results and EOC results into one place that not only parents can see, but we also get the benefit as educators. Teachers have access to this through a teacher portal, and administration does as well. So just a little background before I tell you what's in there. We test over 11,000 students, 11,000 tests were given last year. It's an enormous number, an enormous effort that the schools take on. We opt in for second grade testing of ELA and math, and then for third through fifth grade, we test ELA, math, and social studies, or I'm sorry, ELA, math, and science. And then for middle school, we test all four areas, ELA, math, social studies, and science. And then at the high school, we test in Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2, we test in English 1 and English 2, U.S. history, and also biology. So that is the gamut of what we test, the state asks us to test. So those results come back through this testing cycle. We talked earlier about you get quick scores. So those are immediate scores that come back for meeting the requirement that the state wants us to enter in for high school final exams in those courses. And then now, as you have just seen in the policy, that we will do that for middle school as well. But a lot of times those quick scores, they're just an initial score to meet that requirement. They don't tell you the details, the standards, what is the student mastered and what have they not, and really how to help the parent become a partner in their child's educational success. So this portal, I have kids in the system as well, and I've looked at this portal and looked at these features, and they've done a good job at tailoring it to a parent and giving kind of an overall look, while it also gives places for them to click in and kind of become a partner in the process. So they will see, when parents get on, they'll see personalized videos. It was interesting. I logged in and looked at my daughter's scores, and it uses their name in the video. It's kind of a cute little, for privacy reasons, we can't do that in public, but I would invite, if the director's okay with this, if any of you don't have children in the system currently and you'd like to see it, I don't mind sharing my student in particular in kind of a one-on-one, so you can see exactly what other parents are seeing. But it's a cute kind of video that walks you through it as a parent, and where did my daughter score at expectations? Where did she fall behind? How did that compare to state and district results as well? So the new video that plays is a good feature. It also will tell you about the types of questions that the student sees, and so the parent's able to not only look at their particular student's question or results, they can also click on sample items and kind of see, well, you said, that my daughter scored at or above in a certain area. What questions are they talking about? So you can click in and see what those sample questions are from that particular standard. It also has historical progress, so you can see it puts a bar chart together and will show a parent over time how has your student been performing over the last 3 testing sessions. So, Dr. Raper, go to the next slide. So why would a student use this? Well, or a parent use this family portal? To learn how your student's progressing toward the grade level standards. So it is standards based. It does break it apart, not just with an overall score, but standards. Exploring specific areas, there are links for parents to explore other options and other resources that they can go out for some of the areas they might be concerned about that their student scored low in. The historical data is invaluable as well. I know we've had a lot of requests in the past from parents that are moving schools or moving in and out between Tennessee schools. This allows parents to carry their students' data with them. So I've had 4 students in the system. I can log in, I can get results all the way back to 2019 at this point. A new feature this particular year is the Lexile measurement. So that is an additional measure that the parent will see on the portal and then get recommendations for actual books that student might benefit from based on their reading level. So state's been touting that this year as a new feature that to help parents kind of branch out and do things at home. You can go to the next slide, Dr. Raper. So how do parents access the portal? Well, the state has, and I put it up here, a slide, and they've talked about their website, knowmorelearnmoretn.tn@edu.gov. You chose kind of a wordy, long web address to get to. But all they need to do is, the schools are given paper reports, and those take a while to get back. As you can imagine, a school is getting last year's students. So the 5th graders that have gone up to the middle school, those have to get put up to the middle school and sorted and sent out. So schools do that and get those paper reports. And you're going to see an example of that here in just a second. But when they get those paper reports, there's a nice QR code and an easy way for them to get to this site. Go to the next slide, too. So what we've decided to do here in the system is tomorrow a personalized message goes out. I also oversee the mass communication system, so it makes it easy for me to do this. But we're going to send every parent a personalized text message and email that will give their student's name and their student's ID number that they need with the link so that they can get straight into this instead of worrying about giving general directions. So we've chosen to do that tomorrow. Each parent that has tested students will get very specific directions, and then those parents can then work with their students' teachers on some of the results that they might be seeing. Go ahead, Dr. So what I did is I took a sample report here just to show you what the paper report looks like, and then as I said, I offered if any of you want to see what the online portal offers. It offers everything you see in the paper, plus those extra resources, video, Lexile, and being able to click into some other things. But you can see that each parent gets a report of all the subjects they tested in, and they get to see what level their student scored on, but also where the school scored, where the state scored as well, to kind of compare. It's not always about where they score, but it does help to give yourself some perspective on comparison to those other scores. And you can see down there, there you go. Down there at the bottom, they have a QR code, and the website has 2 links that you can actually get to it. familyreport.tn.edu.gov is an easier one. That's the one we send out. But they can do that QR code, and they've got their student's number right there at the bottom to get into the online version of this. Okay, Dr. Raper. All right, and then this is the back. This is a little more detailed and more useful. It breaks it down into the different areas, like you can see here in Algebra 1, the different subgroup, sub-tested areas there with structure and operations, equations, inequalities. So it takes the subject, and instead of giving you just one overall met expectations, it's going to split it out, and you can see in the English 1 here, for example, some areas the student did right on track, some are close, and some are behind. So that's valuable information for the parent to be able to become kind of a partner in this process and work with their teacher and school. And I think that's it, right, Dr. Ray? Yeah. So do you guys have any questions? Oh.
What grade does this start with?
This starts with second grade. So we do opt into second grade testing. A little more than half of the districts in the state test their second grade in order to get third grade growth scores. That is the only way to do that. So we test math and ELA in second, and then it goes all the way through middle school, and then any of those high school EOC courses. Yeah.
Are all the schools in Tennessee going to adopt this?
It is a statewide program.
Statewide?
Yeah, so this is a state portal, but I had heard that you wanted to hear about how do students and parents get their results back and what can they do with it, and this new portal has made it easy. In the past, it's purely been a piece of paper that goes home that may make it home, may not make it home, and wasn't as, didn't do as good a job at pushing people out to other resources as this online portal will. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Are you planning to do any training with the parents?
Yes, that's a great...
Other than sending them to another site?
Yes, so that's an excellent question. So we want to get the information to them tomorrow. So I'll be sending out that specific text with the email, but it'll also have a link to a web page that we'll have that'll have some videos and walkthroughs and kind of, we don't want to just put it out there and say, there it is, but also to give them a couple of walkthroughs in case they get stuck. I will say one of the great things about this site is once you're on it, there are help buttons everywhere. And since the state paid for it and made it for us, I don't want to redo that, but I do want to at least make sure parents get on and understand what the site is. So there'll be a link to some other resources.
Do you have a way of tracking how many parents may be using it, or?
Yeah, so the state says that I should be able to request at any point, and we can tell how many, like what percentage, kind of like we do with Power School, looking at how many parents are in that portal. We don't own this portal, so that'll be a little more sporadic, but I will check in probably every month and just ask them for data to see, are we using this or not? Yeah.
Looks complicated.
I promise it's not. You can take a picture of the QR code and it gets you right there, and you put your number in and create a password, and it gets you right in there, and you're looking at your students' data. So it's an interesting. I think the state paid the money for a good company to do it, and it looks like a good site. But I think until you see it, which is why I'm offering, if any of you really are interested and would like to look at my students with me, we can definitely arrange that. Yep.
Any more questions?
Michael knows what a horrible computer person I am, so I'm giving him a hard time.
Carolyn would just call me and ask me to come over and get her logged in. So.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is a student representatives update, and this is one of my favorite parts of the agenda. So we have Arnell Patel here representing the student body.
So the first month of school at Cleveland High flew by. Like, it's crazy how many things like immediately started up. I think we have club rotations are starting next week. Rise, like that's a new thing we've added this year. And I've heard a lot of feedback about it through both students and teachers. I heard a lot of students kind of gained connections through this with, they were able to actually contact their Rise teachers for anything they were confused on with all of the new students we have, especially freshmen. It's a really confusing time because high school is just very different from anything you've had. You have more kind of freedom, but also responsibility to look after yourself, what you need to get done. So I heard with us checking, we did this new thing where we have to check our emails every morning, which is absolutely wonderful because a lot of information goes through emails, and that's really giving like freshmen the ability to build those habits early on, which I love to see because I remember like we would be talking about something with me and my friends earlier before we started this program, and they'd be like, how'd you know that? I was like, it was in the email, did you not? And they're like, we're supposed to check those? Yes, we are supposed to check those. But now that we're making students more aware, it's like really nice to see students actually more informed about what's going on. We also have RISE grouped differently this year too. Last year and years before, we had kind of like climb based on ACT scores and other things, and now we just have it on birthday, which is really interesting because you see a lot of different people. There's a lot more diversity, so it allows students to kind of reconnect with students that are different from them. Like, I had been through with the same group of people since like kindergarten, because we all kind of moved on the same kind of course path. And I saw a lot of kids that I had in freshman experience, and I hadn't talked to them since, and I was like, I get to reconnect with these people one last time before I graduate, which was a great experience for me. So RISE is going pretty good. I'll cap it at that. We have the Hall of Fame ceremony coming up, which you said. Leadership 3, the class and student government is kind of like leading that, and I'm in student government, so we'll get that worked out. And sports too, they kicked off, as I said last time. We just had our rival game last week. Regardless of the outcome, we don't talk about it. We really had fun just cheering on our team, and it's just a different experience seeing like everyone in the student section wearing the same like theme of clothes, and we're all just screaming our hearts out for our friends and all of the players. So yeah, the school started out really nice. And that's all I got.
All right, thank you. The last item on the agenda is to plan and appoint delegates to TSBA annual conference. And so we're looking for 3 volunteers.
I will.
We got 1. We got 2.
Are we doing it right?
Come on, we need a 3rd one. We got 3. All right, so
Is this the conference we're already going?
so those 3, Peggy,
I don't know if you want
got
me
them?
to stick my nose in there.
All right. That is the last item on our agenda. We're going to be visiting Mayfield on September 8th. This is a great opportunity for us to go out and have lunch and learn more about the schools. We do that with all of the schools every year, so that's an exciting time. So it'll be interesting to be at Yates and hear from you guys. I don't know when you're on the schedule, but definitely looking forward to that. So we'll close the meeting at 7:14 p.m. Meeting adjourned.